So, in this final video in the series on cultivating safety, I would love to bring the more expansive, spiritual, and existential aspect of creating safety into the conversation. And you may have heard, for example, spiritual teachers use the term the ground of being, or there's a poem about the golden thread or the thread that weaves through everything. We have talk about the ocean and the wave. Lots of metaphors used in spiritual teachings about a kind of continuity that's threaded throughout experience despite the change and despite impermanence. Especially Buddhism talks about um, embracing impermanence. And the thing that is so ironic and makes sense from a developmental psychology and a nervous system perspective is that the only way to really embrace impermanence is actually to root in what is permanent. To let go, we must feel held. To open up, we must feel contained. We have to have a real sense of center. And so ultimately, um, this is where we have to face the more existential questions of mortality. Because just to be in a body, just to be a human being requires saying yes to an experience of impermanence. You know, first of all, just by being born and dying, just by the fact that we will one day have to leave this physical body, and whatever your spiritual belief may be about what happens after that, there's clearly, as witness at the moment of death, something that parts from the physical bones and flesh, and that animate spirit, that aliveness is no longer enfleshed in the body that was a moment ago alive and pulsing, and had an essence of a being within it. Um, and the same happens when someone is born in terms of a human, a being coming into form, into tissue, into cell, into ovum and semen, into zygote, and fetus, growing all the parts that will later become how we express ourselves and inhabit our life. But even though those are like the largest portals, the big portals, we have portals every night when we go to sleep and wake up the next morning. We have portals when we enter new phases, such as menstruation for the first time for girls, when boys like voice changes, when we become a parent for the first time, or when we lose a parent for the first time, the parent is not actually present with us in body anymore. We can't call them or talk to them. There's so many kinds of threshold crossings, right? Each year around the sun, each birthday, meeting new people that we didn't know before, and that if they become an important relationship in our life for years, how our life changes dramatically just by having that new person be a part of our ecosystem. So in a world, in a universe, in an embodied existence as humans, Homo sapiens, how do we find that sense of existential safety, that sense of groundedness, that sense of center, that sense of stability, that sense of what's unwavering, enough to allow these movements in and out of our life, the celebrations and the griefs of things coming and going, including our own health, including our own bodies and our closest relationships, places that change, buildings that no longer exist. How do we inhabit a world that's changing? How do we find that ground? And this is a very, I think, sacred question, and one that that really touches something that is universal, but that also must be like a sovereign experience for each of us in how we speak about, name, or understand this, because it's so profound. And we start to get to a place where you can't name it, you can't encapsulate it in categorical language. But um, But there's my cat is meowing. I don't know if you could hear that. She's like, let me tell you. Um, and just honoring the question that's dropped here into the space. A simple practice might be, how do you cultivate your relationship with the grounded being? Is it that you take a few minutes every morning before you get into your day to just sit and have a practice of being or breathing or meditating or praying? Is it that you read or take in something that nourishes that part of yourself that longs to feel a sense of spiritual nourishment or existential safety? Um, and you could also cultivate it through connecting with an ancestor. If you're not someone who feels connected necessarily to a spiritual guide or practice or tradition of any kind, or even a form of God, universe, or source, or anything like that, you might even sense that a grandparent or a parent or an aunt or an uncle or a teacher that held a space like that in life that has passed. Um, and there's a sense of continuity despite the fact that they're not enfleshed anymore and can't speak to you with their human voice. There's a sense of some kind of connection with their essence in a way that you are connecting across the veil. And another way to think about this is simply connecting to the Indra's net or the fractal grid of nature that is unfolding around us all the time and asking the question, what animates that? What is it that allows for the trees to grow and the breezes to blow and the seasons to know? I'm so poetic, rhymey. It was not planned. The seasons to know um, when to blossom, when to compost themselves. How does a plant know how to find its way around a rock towards the sun? Whatever that is, science, spirituality, nature, there's a way we actually can observe a force that is not seeable, but that organizes our experience. And that organization is something that we can rely on and feel a sense of existential safety within. So I would love to hear if you have any thoughts, comments, questions on this topic of sourcing safety from the existential well or the spiritual wellspring, the ground of being, that which continues despite impermanence. Yeah, feel free to share your shares, and many blessings.